Alright guys, let's get into this triple copy Egyptian god Slifer deck profile. Starting off with 2 copies of Slifer the Sky Dragon. This requires 3 tributes to normal summon and cannot be normal set. This card's normal summon cannot be negated, and when normal summoned, cards and effects cannot be activated. Once per turn during the end phase, if this card is special summoned, send it to the graveyard. It gains 1000 attack and defense for each card in your hand, and if a monster or monsters is normal or special summoned to your opponent's field in attack position, that monster or monsters lose 2000 attack. Then, if the attack has been reduced to 0 as a result, destroy it. Next up, we have 3 copies of Dark Shade, the Sinister Shadow Lord. You can tribute any any number of dark monsters and special summon this card from your hand. And if you do, it gains 500 attack for each monster that you tributed. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can target one level 5 or higher dark monster in your graveyard and add it to your hand. You can only use each effect of Duke Shade, the Sinister Shadow Lord, once per turn, and you cannot special summon monsters the turn you activate either of this card's effect except dark monsters. Next up, we have 2 copies of Reactor Slime, which allows you during the main phase, you can activate this effect and special summon 2 slime tokens, Aqua Water level 1, attack 500, defense 500. Also, you cannot normal or special summon monsters for the rest of this turn except Divine Beast monsters. And during the battle phase, quick effect, you can tribute this card and send 1 Metal Reflex Slime from your hand, and set 1 Metal Reflex Slime from your hand or graveyard, and it can be activated this turn. You can only use each effect of Reactor Slime once per turn. So a good token generator and a good way to get a trap monster on the field with some decent defense points so that you can be able to special summon or summon your Slifer the Sky Dragon. Next up, we have 2 copies of Breaker the Magical Warrior. If this card is normal summoned, place 1 spell counter on it, maximum 1. It gains 300 attack for each spell counter on it, and you can remove 1 spell counter from this card and target 1 spell or trap on the field and destroy that target. Next up, we have 2 copies of Phantom Skyblaster. When this card is normal or flip summoned, you can special summon any number of Skyblaster tokens, Fiend Dark level 4, attack 500, defense 500, up to the number of monsters that you control. Once per turn, during your standby phase, you can inflict 300 damage to your opponent for each Skyblaster monster you control, and Skyblaster monsters you control cannot declare an attack during the turn you activate this effect. Again, just a good token generator. Next up, we have 2 copies of Scapegoat. Flip, you can special summon any number of Black Sheep tokens, Zombie, Dark, level 1, attack 0, defense 0. Next up, we have 2 copies of Amira, the Wicked Warden. You can discard this card and add 1 Layer of Darkness from your deck to your hand, and you can tribute 1 dark monster, draw 1 card, or if you tributed a dark monster other than this card to activate this effect, you can add 1 dark monster with 2000 or more defense from your deck to your hand instead. You can only use this effect of Armia, the Wicked Avatar, once per turn. Next up, we have 1 copy of Breaker, the Dark Magical Warrior. If this card is normal summoned, place 2 spell counters on it, and if this card is pendulum summoned, place 3 spell counters on it. It gains 400 attack for each spell counter on it. You can remove 1 spell counter from this card, then target 1 spell or trap on the field and destroy it. You can only use this effect of Breaker, the Dark Magical Warrior, once per turn. Lastly, for the monsters, we have 1 copy of Beast King Barbaros. You can normal summon or set this card without tributing, but its original attack becomes 1900. You can tribute 3 monsters to tribute summon, but not set this card, and if summoned this way, destroy all cards your opponent controls. So again, it's a good thing that we have a lot of token generating monsters because we can either summon Slifer or Beast King Barbaros depending on what our needs are in the moment. That's it for the monsters. Let's move on to the spells. So for spells, we're starting off with Soul Crossing. During your main phase, immediately after this effect resolves, tribute summon 1 Divine Beast monster, and when you do, you can tribute a monster or monsters that your opponent controls even though you do not control them. But if you tribute summon it this way, apply this effect. Till the end of the next turn after this card resolves, you can only activate 1 card or effect per turn, not counting the effects of Divine Beast monsters. You can only activate 1 Soul Crossing per turn. Next up, we have double copies of Thunder Force Attack. This card's activation and effect cannot be negated. If you control a monster whose original name is Slifer the Sky Dragon, destroy as many face-up monsters your opponent controls as possible. Then, if you activated this card during your main phase, you can apply the following effect. Draw cards equal to the number of monsters destroyed by this effect and sent to your opponent's graveyard. Also, you can only attack with 1 monster this turn. You can only activate 1 Thunder Force attack per turn. Next up, we have 1 copy of Swords of Revealing Light. After this card's activation, it remains on the field, but you must destroy it during the end phase of your opponent's 3rd turn. When this card is activated, if your opponent controls a face-down monster, flip all monsters they control to face-up. While this card is face-up on the field, your opponent's monsters cannot declare an attack. Next up, we have the 1 copy of Monster Reborn, which allows you to target 1 monster in either graveyard and special summon it. Next up, we have 2 copies of Book of Moon, which lets you target 1 face-up monster on the field and change that target to face-down defense position. Next, we have 2 copies of Enemy Controller. Activate 1 of these effects, target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls and change that target's battle position. Tribute 1 monster, then target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls. Take control of that monster until the end phase. Next, we have 1 copy of The True Name. Declare 1 card name, excavate the top card of your deck, and if it's that declared card, add it to your hand. Then you can add to your hand or special summon 1 Divine Beast monster from your deck, otherwise send it to the graveyard. You can only activate 1 The True Name per turn. Next, we have 1 copy of Harpy's Feather Duster, which allows you to destroy all spell and traps your opponent controls. Next, we have 1 copy of March of the Monarchs. Tribute summon monsters you control cannot be destroyed by card effects. Also, neither player can target them with card effects, and you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck. That clause doesn't really matter because there are no extra deck monsters. Next up, we have 2 copies of Card Advance. This lets you look at the top 5 cards of your deck and then place them on the top of the deck in any order. You can tribute summon 1 monster in addition to your normal summon or set this turn. And you can only use this, you can only gain this effect once per turn. This is really good in conjunction with The True Name. Next up, we have 2 copies of Lair of Darkness. All face-up monsters on the field become dark, and once per turn, if you attribute a monster you control to activate a card effect, you contribute 1 dark monster your opponent controls even though you do not control it. Once per turn, during the end phase, special summon as many Torment tokens, Fiend, Dark, Level 3, Attack 1000, Defense 1000 as possible to the turn player's field in defense position, up to the number of monsters tributed for this while this card was face up. That's it for the spells. Let's move on to the traps. So to start off, we have 2 copies of Ultimate Divine Beast. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can discard 1 spell or trap, then target 1 Divine Beast monster in your graveyard, special summon it in defense position, then change the attacking target to it. During the end phase, if you control a Divine Beast monster, you can destroy all face-up cards your opponent controls that activated their effects on the field this turn. You can only use each effect of Ultimate Divine Beast once per turn. Next up, we have 2 copies of Back to the Front. This lets you target 1 monster in your graveyard and special summon it in defense position. And lastly, for our traps and this Slifer the Sky Dragon deck, we have 2 copies of Metal Reflex Slime, which allows you to special summon this card in defense position as an effect monster. Aqua Water level 10, attack 0, defense 3000. This card is also still a trap, and if summoned this way, this card cannot attack. And that's it for this triple Slifer the Sky Dragon Egyptian God structure deck profile.